Okay, so let's stay in Georgia. The YSL RICO case. This has been, out of all the cases I've ever followed on Vlad TV, this has been by far the biggest train wreck I've ever seen. They are still in jury selection. Let me see. One lawyer almost got arrested for bringing pills in and throwing a phone that ended up hitting a deputy on accident. I think some other lawyers, are claiming they have to do OnlyFans to try to, pay their bills. At one point, Young Thug was given a Percocet pill in open court. It's just such a disaster, and the trial hasn't even started yet. So, from your point of view, what's going on in this trial, and how do you expect things to end?
Yeah, I mean, it's even hard to talk about an end because you're absolutely right. Hasn't even begun yet. I think this trial started in September with jury selection, and we're still in. And I don't think we're even close to getting through that. Any juror that sits on that jury is just going to go bankrupt. And unless that juror is retired, there's no way that they can survive. Jurors here in Georgia are paid $25 a day, and the case is going to take about a year. And these jurors have to show up each and every day. So, 5 days a week, $25, $125 a week. What is that? $600 a month? Who can pay their bills $600 a month for an entire year? Your mortgage is $2,000, or your rent's $1,800. I don't know how they're going to be able to sit one person who is not retired on that jury. And that's the jurors, right? Let's talk about the attorneys. These attorneys, some of them are not getting paid at all. Now, the attorneys for Gunna, the attorneys for Young Thug, I know they're getting the bag, right? I'm sure they're getting well into the six figures, and they're earning it. They're doing a really great job. They are being aggressive and proactive and are vigorously representing their clients. But then you look on the other end, I think there are four brothers in this case that are behind bars. They are incarcerated with no bond, and they have no attorney. We have a right in this country to have legal representation in criminal cases if you can't afford it. That same, right is here in Georgia, but they haven't had attorneys, and they're just sitting there. And the judge hasn't given them a bond. They're not represented, and it's not clear if they're ever going to be represented or when they're going to be represented. What happens is if you don't have money for your attorney, you're typically referred to like an indigent defense office, and they'll take your case and represent you. The issue is that if you have a co-defendant, that office cannot represent you both because it could be a conflict of interest. You could point the finger at your co-defendant and vice versa, so they can't represent you in that same office. So then they would need to assign you to private attorneys to take your case. Well, and there are layers to that, but basically that's the end point. So a lot of the co-defendants in this case actually have private attorneys, but those private attorneys are being paid from a fund by the state. Now, I don't know what it is about, maybe the court or the indigent defense office could not find legal representation for those four brothers, but, this case has been ongoing and they're locked up every day and they don't have an attorney. And that's really legally the most egregious thing. That should never happen in this country, ever. It's against their constitutional rights. But then you say, okay, well, lead, do you want to take their case, right? Since you're saying that it's unconstitutional, do you want to represent them? Hell no. Why not? Because the state has paid other attorneys who have stepped up and represented some of these people in the YSL case. The state has paid them $7,500 for a case that's going to last a year. Let me tell you, as an attorney, $7,500, man, that'll get you 2 months, maybe 2 months. It's absolutely not going to get you a full year. There's no way. And they went back. Some of the attorneys went back and really complained, and the state said, fine, we'll give you another $7,500. And that's pretty much all you're getting. So can anybody imagine working for an entire year and getting paid $15,000? Like, I don't even know if that's minimum wage. I think minimum wage is Georgia. It's like $7.25 an hour. So I'd have to do the math. But I promise you, it's less than what 15-year-olds make down here at Chick-fil-A. And these are not 15-year-olds, slinging these chicken sandwiches. These are licensed professional attorneys representing young men who are fighting for their lives. And they're getting paid less than 15-year-olds. The attorney that you mentioned who said she's going to start doing OnlyFans, I told her to start it. I told her, listen, you got to do something. There's no way. I'm being facetious, of course, but I did an interview with her. I had her and Suri on my channel, and we talked about this. There's no way you can survive. No person, unless you're 15 or 16 years old, can survive for $15,000 for a year. The way attorneys make money is we charge you for your case, and then we do that 50 times, 100 times, 200 times. We have a caseload, right? So we need a lot of money for our expenses, whether that's our building, our paralegals, our support staff, but we have multiple cases. You cannot survive with one case where you've been paid $15,000 for that case and then do that a year, because this case does not allow you to work on other cases. It's not like they can work on this case once a month and then work on other cases at their office. No, they have to be in court on this case virtually every day. So they're not allowed to handle other cases. If I'm in this YSL case and I try to take another case, that case is going to say, hey, you have a hearing in May. And I'm going to tell that court, no, I can't go to that hearing because I'm in this case. So I need you to reschedule it. The court's going to say, fine, we're going to put your case to September. September's going to roll around and they're going to say, hey, you have this hearing in September. I'm going to say no because I still got this YSL case. Court's going to say fine and put me in December. December comes around, same thing. So none of these attorneys can really work on other cases while this YSL case is taking place. And the judge says that it's going to take place. It's going to last a year. Once the jury has been impaneled, they haven't even found a jury yet. And so we talked about the jury members not being able to take this case. I don't know how they're going to sit in that box for a year getting paid $25 a day. I couldn't do it. I'd file bankruptcy. The attorneys, one attorney, the woman who said she's going to start OnlyFans, she's actively trying to get out of this case. And I don't know if the judge is going to let her out. Hopefully he does, because she's going to go bankrupt. Maybe a few other attorneys are going to go bankrupt on this case. And this case is very interesting because Fannie, who is the DA, is wilding out on these RICO cases. And now other attorneys in the state are going to be like, oh, I was going to sign up for this RICO case, but I saw how you treated the attorneys in the YSL case. I saw how you made them go bankrupt. So there's no way that I'm going to sign up for this case. Now, instead of 4 young men who don't have attorneys because no attorney has stepped up to go bankrupt, now you might have 12 young brothers who don't have attorneys, or 26 young brothers who don't have attorneys. So this case it's a watershed moment in our state, and maybe really in the nation, for what's going on with these RICO cases. This case did not have to be a RICO case. They could have broken this case up. They didn't have to make it so big. But the fact that they made it big, it sucked up all of the state's resources. And now it looks like a lot of people are not going to get the representation that they need. And that's just, on the representation side. You're absolutely right. This case has been a circus. There were hand-to-hand drug transactions in the courtroom, like you mentioned. This attorney this judge who's an awesome judge, Judge Glanville, he was one of the last judges I was before I retired. Awesome judge, but he's trying to impose discipline in his courtroom. So he's made attorneys write essays for contempt of court, write legal papers. He made one attorney buy lunch for all of the other fellow attorneys. He has sentenced potential jurors to jail for recording in the courtroom and this and that. He's handling a circus himself. I was covering a live stream of this. This is back when they were live streaming the case. And me and my co-host, AV to the seventh power, we're watching the stream. And then I see in the chat, hey, what is that on the TV? Because on the live stream, you could see the prosecutor's desk. And on the desk was a monitor. And you could see the monitor. And in the chat, everybody was like, wait a minute. Is that gay porn? Oh, yeah. Two grown men having raw sex in the middle of trial came up on the panel. How did that happen? Because someone had hacked in to the feed and put that on the stream. So everybody saw it, right? There was another time I was covering this case, and the judge was on the bench, and they're having a motions hearing, and the judge, picks up his phone in the middle of trial. Who is it? Trolls. Trolls called the judge in the middle of trial. I don't know how they got Judge Glanville's number, but you see him looking at it, and they put the recording of the conversation on the internet. So if you want to hear that conversation, you can get on YouTube and see it. Judge picks up the phone and they're like, hey, why did you accept that money? And the judge is like, who is this? Why did you accept that money for YSL? You're bought. How much money did you get? And the judge kind of motions to his security so he can hand the phone to one of the officers so they can go and try to trace the call. Everything has happened in this courtroom. You mentioned that one of the attorneys got arrested for bringing drugs into the courtroom, but that's the way they frame it. That's the way they say it. What they don't explicitly say is that they were his prescription drugs. He never should have been arrested. He never should have been charged. They were initially trying to charge him with a felony. I think they've dropped the case now or dismissed the charges, but he still had to go and get booked in and do the whole rigmarole. And the case hasn't even started yet. So I have no idea when the actual trial phase of this case is going to start. I have no idea when it's going to end. I'll tell you this, it doesn't look good for Young Thug. Fannie, who is the DA, is really going after this guy. And she's cut a lot of plea deals with people and say, hey, man, I'm going to give you probation, but guess what? You got to come back. And a lot of people have said, oh, yeah, we're going to come back, right? A lot of people have acknowledged that YSL was a gang, and it's going to be an uproad path for Young Thug.
Well, I mean, touching on what you just said, Gunna was the one that took the first plea deal. And there was a recording where he admitted that, YSL is a criminal organization and he saw crimes in furtherance of the gang. Now, I remember when we reported on it, Gunna's lawyer called me and said, hey, I want to clear this up. And he was very adamant, and I've had multiple conversations with him about this, that, listen, yes, they took the plea deal and he said what he said, but based on the way this is set up, this can't be used against Young Thug or any other defendant in the situation. And since this might actually get escalated into a federal case, anything he said could potentially be used against him in self-incrimination. So therefore, he's adamant that Gunna is not going to hurt anybody with his plea deal. Do you agree with that? Or do you think that's just his lawyer trying to protect his client?
No, I agree with that. It really shouldn't be the case that one attorney, one co-defendant statement can be used against another co-defendant in this case, right? So I would agree with that, but I also agree with your point that he's trying to make his client look as favorable as possible. That's why he's calling you. He wants to get this out on a huge platform like yours, that my client is not snitching, because apparently that's a really big thing on the streets. So he's trying to clear that up, but it clears it up legally maybe, but everybody knows what that means, right? How do you find a person in Atlanta who has not heard about the Young Thug case? How do you pick an impartial jury? Everybody's heard about this case. Everybody in Fulton County wants to avoid being called in on this case. It's huge. And so if it gets out that Gunna pleaded and said, oh, yeah, YSL, that was a gang and they were doing stuff in furtherance of this criminal enterprise, people are going to hear that. So it doesn't matter how many times the judge says, hey, disregard everything that you've heard, outside of the courtroom. None of that is evidence. When people hear things, they take it into consideration. So.
Yep. Like I said, it was an absolute mess. It's an absolute mess that's still ongoing.